That is
Hello,
hot.
everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm complaining about the heat. It's very hot. And we were chatting, but before we start, we have to say happy birthday to Bubba. Happy birthday, Bubby. Happy name day to you. And hi to Connie. And of course, Jen, Lady Wolverton is here. So thank you very much. I had this really weird email exchange with Jen during the week that like Gmail turned all my emails into a weird encrypted. It looked like I was sending her a raven on mushrooms, but figure it out. Anyway, tonight we are discussing chapters 5 to 9 in A Feast for Crows, which is Sam 1 to Brienne 2. And we're going to do it a little bit differently to try and speed things up. We're going to just pick out the key ideas from the chapters. We found last week that there's so much in Feast that we're not going to kind of summarize what happens in a chapter. We're just going to pick out the key points. Otherwise, the Feast chapters are so dense, we'll be here all day. Hi, Sunny. Thanks a million for joining us. So Claire, how did you get on with this week?
Well, I'm really enjoying this book.
Me too.
I almost got to the point, because usually I get to the end of the 5 chapters for the week and I'll just kind of leave it and let those thoughts percolate, and I won't start the next chapters until, you know, after we've had our Sunday night discussion. This week I wanted to kind of get straight into the next chapter. I did stop after I thought, no, I need to just pick up my pen and make some notes, but I'm really enjoying. And there are little things, and again, I don't know if it's just the way I'm seeing things, but I think there are different concepts, like the whole, you know, the religions and the old gods and the new gods, and I just think there are little clues and little curious kind of
absolutely
references here. I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I was reading this week and it was like, okay, well, there's a sign for this. And so
how difficult was it for you not to delve into the John chapter from Dance when reading Sam 1?
Yes, it was difficult not to. Although, you know, I am still enjoying listening to the audio version. However, Stuart was telling me that the gap between Storm of Swords and Feast was so big, I think it was about more than 5 years, that Roy Dotrice obviously had done the audio books for the first 3 books, and he wasn't around, or he wasn't available, or for some reason he wasn't able to do Feast and Dance, or Feast certainly. So they got somebody else to do it, but nobody liked it. So they got rid of this original, get this other guy, and brought Roy Dotrice back somehow. And I don't know if it's just because it's been 5 years and he just thought he wasn't going to be doing it again. But what confused me as like an audio listener was he completely changed some of the characters' accents from one book to another. Like Brienne used to have like a Cornish accent, and now she's got more of a Midlands accent. And so, you know, there are a couple of
significant. Did he drop the Welsh one from Jaime or something?
Yeah, and he's
Welsh.
No, he's so that's been quite difficult for me. But again, it also makes it feel as though this is a very different book and these are very different characters. But I still do appreciate that it was Roy Dotrice finally came back to do the audio, and it just made me sadly think, who's going to be able to do such a good job on Winds of Winter?
God, they are going to have to pick up a massive paycheck, because at least he had time to build on. Like that's a huge thing to come in and do. The amount of characters he'll have to voice, or she'll have to voice. I'm presuming they'll get a he, but all right, so we're straight into Sam 1. Next week, by the way, we'll be reading from Sansa 1 to Brienne 3, which is our 3rd week in a row to end with a Brienne chapter. There's a lot of times where we'll end or begin with Brienne or Cersei, but it happens to be Brienne a lot at the moment. So yeah, let us know what you think of the new shorter format as well. I think it's going to be better overall. So Sansa 1 to Brienne 3 then for next week, which is 10 to 14. so some of these chapters do happen at the same time as other chapters. Sam 1 is unique in that I think it happens at the same time as John 2 in Dance. So if you were probably aware of that already, but it's what I think it's only the second time that has happened. I think we had it with Tyrion Cat chapter in Game of Thrones, where they were kind of more or less similar POV situations at the trial.
Yeah.
But here, Sam and John, this is all about baby swaps and books and talk of others. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to talk about. So what do you want to start off with here with Sam 1?
This is just again another tantalizing us with unknown histories and mysteries, right up until the end of the chapter, where, and I'd completely forgotten about this again, when Maester Aemon and Sam and Gilly are leaving, and Maester Aemon gives John the Jade Compendium, and this is all about it's kind of like an almanac or something about, all the things that are going on in the East and the Jade Sea, and apparently this is where dragons come from, around that area, the Jade Sea. So, and he tells John knowledge is a weapon, and I can't remember if John does anything about that or what, and I just think that must have been mentioned for a reason, that there's some information in there, or there's some answers in there, knowledge as a weapon. But I mean, there's a couple of observations, just general observations for me from this chapter.
Sorry, before you do anything, I'm going to write down knowledge as a weapon, because I do have a tinfoil theory that is actually perfect for in the next chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think there's just a couple of things in terms of general observations, but the rest of it for me is just questions. Is there a dragon egg at the wall? What secret might Sam find in the ancient books? Why doesn't Sam tell John about Bran? There's a whole list of questions for me from this chapter, but just one thing really, well, a couple of things. The mention of Osric Stark being not, I think Sam's sort of reassuring John about his position as Lord Commander, and he tells him that there was another Stark who was a very young Lord Commander. He was only 10 years old, and he served for about 60 years or something like that. But he was a Stark bastard, which again just made me think there's a massive history there of the Starks sending their bastards to the wall. It's not just John. I mean, we've got more experience of that through John in this series, but it just, I can't stop thinking that Mance is a Stark bastard and he was sent to the wall, or there are other. I mean, I don't know if
has there ever been a question about Benjen?
Well, he's always just described as the third son, isn't he?
So it's the biggest, one of the biggest questions as to why he's at the wall.
Yeah, because he needn't have been, and he was probably needed. He could have been just like a lesser lord somewhere in the north. It wasn't as if there weren't tensions that could have done with quelling by a third brother being present there in the north. But I just thought it was interesting that Osric Stark, another Stark bastard, was Lord Commander prior to John at the wall. And again, we have mention of, and I'm sure that this is because there's going to be a huge iconic moment with Sam where he kills somebody with a bow and arrow. He mentions that he's the worst archer ever, because there's loads of archery going on at the moment. John's got everyone training up on like archery practice, and Sam's just like, oh, it's the worst thing that, I'm just the worst. And I just think it's like,
also mentions it later on, doesn't he? He said an archer.
It's mentioned a lot. Yeah. And so I just think he's going to take out somebody, even if he doesn't mean to, or it's by accident or whatever. But I think with a bow and arrow, Sam in the later books, and I'm thinking somewhere around Eltown, so I'm thinking something like Euron, is going to take out a significant character, because we just, it can't be coincidence that we're getting consistent references in Sam's chapter about his poor archery skills.
Yeah, and Jen and Connie are talking about the Jade Compendium here, and of course, yeah, they write about the Long Night here, which is great because Sam does bring up the inconsistencies in history. It's kind of like, you know, if we decided we're going to write a history of the Roman Empire with no documents, or maybe not as far back as that, maybe like just the early Middle Ages with no references or sources at all. That's kind of what the compendium to me is. It's like this account of the Long Night, but it's, you know, it's hundreds and hundreds of years after the fact. Lady Wolverton is convinced that he knows about Lyanna. I think that is Benjen. Yeah, I mean, there is a theory out there that Benjen helped Lyanna and Rhaegar to escape and that Ned finds out about it. Sonny says Benjen and Mormont, why would they go to the wall? I mean, I think we mentioned this when we were going through Clash, that I at least am convinced that Mormont, Benjen and Aemon all know who Jon is, and there was a mini conspiracy to get Jon to the wall, and there's something maybe about his dragon blood or something that they need Benjen at the wall, or they need Jon at the wall, maybe to keep him safe. Who knows? And Lady Wolverton says, Ned never acts like Bran needed to go to the wall. Connie says, no road dashes on the tree by Benjen near the Story Cliffs. It ends there in Game of Thrones. Yeah, it's that. I wonder, will we find anything more about Benjen anyway in Winds? But yeah, so getting back to Sam and his books, it opens with the little mouse eating and just this like constant references to Sam being kind of weak but standing up when he needs to stand up, and also he has a line to Jon that the other guys don't have, and that's kind of a source of envy maybe with the other boys, because they don't like Jon has changed and he's not cool anymore and he doesn't really want anything to do with them, but he still gets to see Sam the Slayer. But I'll come back to the mouse in the Arya chapter. Actually, I do have a theory about the mouse in the Arya chapter, so let's come back to that. But yeah, so in the books themselves, then we have the Long Night. We also have Sam finding out about dragon steel, which Jon and him reckon might be Valyrian steel. Do you think it's anything different to Valyrian steel? Do you think that's dragon glass, or is it just Valyrian steel, or do you think there's something different?
I mean, possibly it could be something different. I think there's just so much that we don't know about old magic, and I mean the swords that the others, you know, they're completely different, and it's like they're literally made of ice. I think there's, you know, there's a potential for, and we hear that I'd forgotten about this, that the Children of the Forest used to give the Night's Watch dragon glass. Like they used to give them like caches of the stuff. So why doesn't that happen anymore? Is it just because people don't? I'm not sure about what happened in terms of the relationships and the agreements and the pacts between people. But what we do find out, really, the bottom line, I guess, is that we don't know the real history of the First Men and of, you know, ancient history, the history that we know about, and that as far back as Sam seems to be able to find was all written by the Septons, and so you know, and the Andals. So it's just complete. What, you know, there's so much stuff that we don't know that's just completely unknown, and it all seems to relate to this area of the old gods and old magic. And
there is a question about how necessary it is to know that history. Even Jon is like, you're not really telling me much. You're not really telling me anything that I really need to know right now. And we get the benefit of being in Sam's head when Jon says to him, I'm going to send you to Old Town to become a maester, and he's terrified. Like the levels of anxiety we get. Something I completely forgot about, this punishment that he got for his dad, where he was chained up, which I kind of maybe blocked out because I don't want to think of Sam in pain. But Jon doesn't have insight into that, because Jon is not going to entertain any notion of Sam being defined by his own personal history. That isn't going to define where you go now, Sam. I don't want to hear it anymore. You either do or you don't do it. That's there isn't going to be a choice. There isn't a try option. And maybe
he even says to him, if you want to be afraid, but I command you to hide that fear. And that's pretty abusive, really. That's
it is. Well, I do, like, you can see where John is coming from, because
it's that ultimate pull yourself together, isn't it? You know, you've got to do this. You know, this is your.
John doesn't really have time to get this guy through this, and also Sam has stood up and has withstood more horrors than most people at the wall at this stage. So I think John is kind of like, listen, you can do it. I don't need your self-doubt right now. I just need to kill Sam the Slayer, you know. And it is kind of, obviously it's terrifying for Sam, but he will do it. I mean, we all believe in him. And it is tough love. It's not entirely tough love.
No, it's sad the impact that his father has run so deep with his, you know, his complete self-doubt, because he has been pretty heroic. He takes, you know, he gives credit to other things for that. Like, oh, Gilly makes me brave. I'm not brave, but Gilly makes me brave. And there is I suppose what John's saying is, look, now is the time for you to start writing your own history, because up to now it's been defined by your father. So you need to, you know, it's that whole kill the boy, let the man be born kind of thing.
And that's what John will think in his POV, kill the boy. And, you know, obviously that boy is himself, but maybe it's Sam, maybe it's Monster. So Connie says, you wonder if the Watch tried to forge their own Valyrian steel using obsidian from the Children of the Forest to strengthen the fragile dragon glass, and maybe were successful. I mean, it would be really interesting if they they managed to forge some. I still think there's something very different about ice, the Stark sword, to other types of Valyrian steel. So there might be something that might be more leaning towards the dragon steel. But yeah, so was there anything else then about the books that you wanted to look at? Because
no, I don't think so. No.
Just leading on from that, I mean, the other two things I want to talk about are the optics. That the first one is the optics, with the whole thing with the Stannis camp being there and trying to make it like Sam kind of worries how it's going to look from the outside if they're two team Stannis, that they need to keep the Lannisters on board. And it's just a credit to Sam's political mind and how intelligent he really is, that he's able to say, we need to keep them on side. I know you want to make them suffer, but I mean, there is a huge danger here, isn't there, sending Sam away, because he's losing this source of really good advice that he's not going to get anywhere else now. He's sending Aemon and Sam away.
Yeah.
So there isn't a substitute for that for John. And this is where things start to fall apart for John and Dance, because he sends Sam away, I think.
And he's obviously more vulnerable to Stannis and the Red Woman. So,
and then obviously the big thing in this chapter is the beginning of the baby swap, which I know you're fascinated by, this baby swap.
I mean, I think for a number of different reasons. I think it could mirror another tale in history that is yet to be revealed. I think it's massively to do with a number, like that baby is like the 1,000th or 100th, or, you know, there's a significance to the, you know, where he falls in the line of how many babies have been born. And I also think there's significance to the fact that it's Mance's baby, and King's blood comes up quite a few times.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's building up and building up and building up, but it's the fact that it's mentioned very randomly in Feast is great for us meeting lots of secondary characters, which another reason I think Roy Dotrice probably struggles a little bit, because there's so many people along the way, like, you know, even that Brienne asks all the time, have you seen a maid of 10 and 3 auburn hair, blah blah blah, and so she meets all these people along the way. There's lots of different voices for him to do, bless him. But there's a couple of random characters in this clutch of chapters. One is the jailer, Longwaters, in Jaime's chapter, who mentions that he's got royal blood, and also the innkeep in Brienne's chapter, who says that, oh, you know, they should say the queen this, and the, you know, your royal highness, blah blah blah, that she's got royal blood, or this thing about royal blood. And I just, you know, does that mean that anybody could have royal blood or king's blood? Or
I like, there's lots of bastards around, there's lots of intermarrying between houses.
Does it mean then that it's not as important as maybe Melisandre thinks it is, or is it?
I think that's certainly true. I think she claims credit for things that are a result of her burning that aren't at all. They're just completely circumstantial. That's true. But also there seems to be something within, like, how close you are to an anointed king. Like, so, you know, Edric Storm is like, you know, he's of Robert's bloodline, like, directly. Like, she doesn't seem to be burning that many second cousins. But at the same time, she'll justify whatever she needs to do. I mean, John is pretty adamant that he, like, Mance is no more a king than he is, which, you know, I don't actually know if that holds much water. I don't know. I don't think that hold any water, unless they're already doing the swap with Mance as well.
So John already seems to know that the North won't fight for Stannis.
Yes. Even with Karstark's moving over. Yeah. Not going to happen. So that's kind of worrying.
Yeah.
When did John suddenly do all this growing up?
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's that with John, I think it's almost like a symbiotic relationship with the North. I think he's got this feel for the North that none of his other siblings had, and I think he seems to. I mean, I don't know if the North would rally behind John as Stannis expects them to, because he's a bastard. I don't know if that would happen. I don't know if people like the Manderleys at White Harbour would just go, no, let's wait and see if we can find Rickon, because you're a bastard. So, you know, I don't know if they would necessarily rally behind him, but I think he probably is the one that has more of an affinity. He kind of knows it's like this spider sense that he has, that he knows what the North will do and won't do, and he especially seems to have this connection to all things beyond the wall as well. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. The only other thing that I want to comment on the Sam chapter ties to the Arya chapter. So unless there's something else you wanted to discuss with the Sam chapter,
just in respect of them being sent away in this chapter, do you think there are any? I mean, the reasons that we have for them being sent away is for Sam to become a Maester and gain more knowledge and go back to the Wall ultimately. I mean, I don't know if you feel Sam ever will become a Maester, or if he ever will go back to the Wall in the books, but also for the baby's safety because of the King's Blood issue, and also because of the King's Blood issue with Aemon as well. But do you think there's another reason why John wants to send them away, or is that just?
I don't know. I mean, it's pretty. I wonder how much of it is John's idea. I know Aemon is really the one that kind of, he hammers this out with Aemon, in his POV in Dance, but for me, it's all, maybe when we get to Dance we'll see for sure. But it's always been unclear as to whose idea it was.
That's, I mean, if you think about it, that's a massive thing to do. Just with Maester Aemon, he's been there so long, you know, and he's the one that he's the reason that he's so old is he says, you know, cold ice preserves, and that's why he thinks he's been alive so long at the Wall. But you'd think that just for the sake of his life's worth, but you know, that he'd want to die at the Wall. And also Melisandre as well. I mean, all she has to do is hang around. If she really wants to get hold of some king's blood, just hang around and wait for the old guy to keel over. He's getting on a bit, you know.
Yeah.
And I just think you're sending him away, knowing that it's going to expedite his symptoms and blah 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 and whatever. He's going to die, and he does pretty early.
He must know he's going to die, because he talks about like sitting in the inn drinking cider in Old Town, and it's like that's never going to happen. Yeah. So I mean, if he has the foresight which he has had since a Game of Thrones, he should know that he's never going to survive this journey. Even Sam says he's not going to survive this journey. So I don't know what that's all about. And why not send both kids away and keep everybody safe? Why not sacrifice yourself, Aemon? Is there a reason why you shouldn't die at the Wall? Is there a reason why you shouldn't be around? Maybe he knows more than he thinks. I mean, he does give Sam a list of specific books that he wants to bring. And Sam comments that he bought all of the books that they would need, an extra Wayne, to bring them. Luckily, he couldn't find them or whatever. But it's a strange. It's one of those times when I really want the POV for Maven or Aemon.
Yeah, but, definitely.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. If anyone else has an answer to that.
Do you think, and I think probably not, and it's quite sad really, will Gilly ever see her son again?
No. I don't think Gilly makes it.
No.
Sonia asks, does Aemon want to get further away from Bloodraven? That's totally possible. Yeah. That's totally possible. I mean, it could be that him dying at the Wall would allow Bloodraven maybe to work him, or I don't know, maybe mentally he's able to keep him away. I don't know. There's something not quite right with this plan anyway. I mean, even we find out in Dance, I think Jon even lies to Stannis at one stage to make Gilly's baby sound stronger than it is, so that it'll look like the baby that she's taken with her is her own baby, so nobody will ask questions. So the way he describes Gilly's baby to Stannis is actually Dalla's baby.
Yeah.
It's very calculated on Jon's part. It sounds very Ned-like, that's for sure. That's it for Sam 1. And we'll be moving on then to Arya 1, which is chapter 6. And our first look at Braavos through the eyes of Arya. I love this chapter. It's a great chapter. I feel like Arya's chapters in Feast could be a standalone book. I mean, Arya's chapters always feel like they could be standalone books in comparison to the rest of the chapters. So where do you want to start with this, Claire? I text you during the week to say I've...
Well, it's funnily enough, even though I really, really enjoyed listening to this chapter, I didn't actually write many notes on it.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I've got a couple of questions, but the things that stand out as sort of main observations. So obviously this is Arya's arrival in Braavos, but I just feel as though, you know, it's interesting that we're at this stage with Arya where she's still very confused. She doesn't really know where she's supposed to be going. She muses that she never seems to find the places that she sets out to go, you know, so she's a bit lost at the moment. She doesn't know where she's going or what she's supposed to be doing, but she says that she doesn't know what to wish for, and but she feels as though she doesn't need anything but Needle. So there's always, Needle is always that grounding for
That's
Arya.
her Stark identity.
Yeah. And she always seems to think about or reminisce about Jon, or thinking about Jon at the Wall, and you know, she can muse about Winterfell, but Needle just pulls all that together for her. So it's Needle and it's a wolf dreams when she you know, when she can kind of walk with Nymeria.
It's funny that you say it about her not being confused and not making any decisions, because she doesn't really make this decision to go to that. She's just brought to the House of Black and White.
Yeah, she just kind of finds herself there. She just sort of ends up there.
The captain's son on the ship, is it? He brings her to there.
Yeah.
It's not like she doesn't ask to go. She's just assumed that's where she's going, so that's where they take her. Which I forgot about, actually. I never really, I don't know if I've ever really thought about how she got to the House of Black and White, but she does think about, she actually wanted to go to the Wall, and now she's here. Like you said. And we get a description of Braavos. We get a bit of a history on Braavos as well, and that's founded by slaves. That it's, you know, it seems to be a place where religious freedom is widely kind of accepted, and she's amazed to learn about this many-faced god, and it's like a walled city, and it sounds kind of like a cross between New York and Venice, like just this kind of kind of a city, like I was thinking Gangs of New York, you know, just this city where it's just kind of very cosmopolitan, and it's not really about the highborn and things like that. It seems a little bit more outlaw based, and these canals and everything. But the other thing is that this is obviously on the boat. All the men want her to remember their names.
Yes. Yeah.
They clearly know where she's going, and she hasn't a clue, which is quite interesting. And she promises that she'll remember their names and stuff like that. So it's the House of Black and White is a strange one. The only decision she makes in this entire chapter really is the decision to eat the worm. It's really the only one she makes. And even that, it's more an instinct. And that's why they keep her, basically. It's such a gross image.
But it is a real tomboyish Arya thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, this yellow skull and... Ugh.
Just a couple of things that you said there about... Braavos is described as being somewhere where all gods are worshipped in Braavos, and she kind of takes a tour and is able to sort of take in, you know, this happening, all these different religions and temples and churches. She can see them all around her, and she wonders whether or not any of these gods that are present in Braavos will answer her prayer. And of course, her prayer, Arya's prayer, is her list. So she's thinking about, will any of the gods hear? So I do think that the House of Black and White and the Faceless Men are linked and rooted somehow to religion.
Yeah.
And the fact that all gods are worshipped in Braavos. It's all... honestly, I think there is only one religion, and it's the old religion. It's the one that's always been there. But I think it's had to disguise itself, and inside some, like this wacky theory that I've got, that old gods have hidden the religion inside the new gods. But also the fact that all gods are worshipped in Braavos, and you've got the many-faced god, and there seems to be some kind of relation there to, you know, like the House of Black and White, the ebony and the weirwood, the black and white door. One of my questions was, how is the House of Black and White related to the old gods? Because it really does seem that the many-faced god is somehow related to this original religion, which I see as the old gods. It was Arya always. I mean, one of the things that you said earlier was, you know, she just found herself there and she didn't really make any decisions. It almost feels as though, you know, that coin bought her the passage, but also it was kind of, this feels as though it was planned. Feels as though it was planned, but but it also, the way Arya's been described to us as readers so far, it feels as though she's predisposed to this. Like this was always going to be her destiny. She was always going to be, you know, all the different titles and nicknames and things that she's had so far up to this point. So it's never going to surprise us as readers that Arya is the one that seems more predisposed to become a faceless man. But was she, or was it planned by somebody all along? And if it was, who's the person who's planned it, and why?
they claim they don't know who Jack Nagar is, who actually gets a mention in Jaime's chapter as well, or at least we know it's him that they're talking about in Jaime's chapter. But yeah, even this thing where, you know, she sees through the kindly man. Sorry, I'm getting a wine delivery from the hand. Thank you very much. That is a glass of wine for this.
Hey.
That's an Irish measure. Thanks. And hi, AU and Brienne also in the chat. So yeah, so when she sees through this illusion, just what you were saying there about it seems planned. Like the skull comes off, and he asks her to kiss him. And she bends to kiss him and eats the worm that's coming out of his eye. And he says nobody's ever done that before. And it seems as if it's some sort of test. But really, is it just that anything she did at that point, she would have got through? If she decided, no, I'm not kissing you, it would have been, oh, nobody's ever refused before.
Yeah, yeah, she was never going to be turned away. No.
The other thing, though, with the worm, throughout most of like Christian Europe, like all through the Middle Ages, it was actually a worm that was referred to as being in the Garden of Eden, not a snake. So this idea, and this kind of comes into my tinfoil theory a little bit. So a lot of cultures have this story of gaining knowledge from the gods or from a deity is quite dangerous for human beings. So you have that with the Adam and Eve story. We have it with, I think it's Fionn McCool with the Salmon of Knowledge. It's a Celtic story. You have like
the theme that you're somehow not worthy enough to know this knowledge, therefore you're in peril, or
human beings can't handle that much knowledge.
Yes,
like Prometheus, that's the big
one.
Of course.
That
we once we have the fire, we'll start burning one another with it. So the eating of the worm might represent that with Arya as well. That kind of idea that she's about to take on something that she really, really wants, but should she actually have it? Like when she starts eating death, and you see that kind of iconography in medieval churches all across, especially Germany and Switzerland as well. That kind of the skull with the worm coming out, or a serpentine creature of some sort. But in the Middle Ages, they would refer to it as the worm. Actually, I think Blake refers to it as the worm as well.
See, if I was going to do a risk assessment on Arya at this point in her journey, I would probably say she is, and this is modern day times obviously, but if I was going to do some sort of safety risk assessment on Arya as a kind of abandoned child or a child at risk, I would say that this is probably her most vulnerable time. Absolutely. because she's hungry and ambitious almost for something, but she's got no focus. She doesn't quite know, you know, she's still grieving and feels abandoned, and but she's got this hunger inside her. So she's ripe for, you know, somebody taking advantage of that. And
in our world, it would be somebody maybe trying drugs.
Or like grooming young teenage children. It's so it's in a way it's, I mean, we've got this new adventure and new backdrop and lots of different scenarios, and Arya's story does go down quite a gruesome gothic route, but it's actually really quite sad as well at the same time.
Absolutely. Enjoy your chores, Jen. We'll try and keep you company while you're doing it. This kind of ties in. It's not really tinfoil, really. Maybe some people will label it as tinfoil. AU will probably label it as tinfoil. So we had the mouse at the beginning of Sam's chapter nibbling away at the pages. And actually, coincidentally, I only learned this week that the margins in a notepad, the history of the margin is because that was the free paper that the mice could eat back in the days before they had a printing press, like to stop mice from eating all the way through, or to at least have that kind of literally a margin for error, a margin that the mice could nibble at. But this idea that, because this comes up a lot with Arya as well, the idea of a mouse, and she doesn't want to be a mouse again. And that was her greatest source of shame when she was in Harrenhal, being reduced to a mouse. And the other person, she does think a lot about Jon. She thinks a lot about Nan as well, old Nan. And old Nan, especially for you, I know, but for all of us really, is this harbinger of great knowledge. And in this chapter, she says, old Nan is dead, all men must die. That's pretty much what she says.
Yeah.
I think this idea of her getting knowledge in this, or on the verge of getting knowledge of all that kind of thing, I think it will come to a stage where Arya will take old Nan's face. There'll be some stage where she'll be either at the Dreadfort. I was thinking maybe it'll be Bran warging old Nan, but we have no evidence that old Nan is dead yet. She's at the Dreadfort. For Arya to really kind of get the full vengeance for the Red Wedding, it's not just going to be Freys, right? It'll have to be Bolton's as well. For her, she thinks about old Nan a lot. She thinks about the knowledge. Bran thinks about her as well a lot, old Nan. So I feel like one of them is going to take old Nan's body in some way. There's something going to be, for me, there just seems to be a lot of kind of symbolism around that. They want her to live on. I don't know.
That's quite interesting, because in my notes I've got about Arya reminiscing that old Nan tells her that the Titan eats highborn girls. So maybe what that actually means is, when she's thinking about old Nan and gaining knowledge, that the Titan is teaching her as a highborn girl how to eat other people. There's a different way of looking at that. But speaking of the Titan, who do you think he was?
I don't know.
Because my brain just goes off into lots of different directions sometimes when we come across these features or these historical kind of the stories about the Age of Heroes and things like that. But it seems as though this is based on somebody who existed, and that he was, there are stories that he was like some massive giant that came down from the hills and was the protector of Braavos. But just the description of, and I know that people will be making sure that this happens, that the long green seaweed hair is put in there by people every day, but I just got a real kind of sea god vibe about the Titan of Braavos.
Yeah.
And and I always, whenever I think of sea god, I always think of, again, we've got a lot in this book, particularly in Feast, around the Ironborn and the Sea Stone Chair and the drowned god. And then you've got this massive giant kind of character that seems to be based on someone in history, with this long green seaweed hair that just kind of makes me think of Aemon, damp hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. This Aeron, sorry, not Aemon.
Yeah. I was like, Aemon?
Yeah. It's I don't know if there's a connection there somehow. Is this? Was the world inhabited by massive giant creatures at one point, and they came from originally the Iron Islands, and this character somehow moved over to Braavos and left his, maybe that was the Sea Stone Chair was his original,
it does
where he came from. I don't know.
There certainly seems to be a suggestion that there was a more complex civilization on the Iron Islands at some stage. I mean, that's certainly true of Ireland. I mean, we kind of regressed a little bit at one stage in our history, and the Iron Islands is kind of loosely based on Ireland, I believe. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, even at the end when she says that when she's asked if she's hungry and she says yes, but not for food, or she thinks yes, but not for food. That's something that Aeron kind of touched on in his chapter 2. It's definitely something that we've seen with Brienne as well. So there's definitely, there's definitely something there, some connection.
I mean, just from a kind of technical point of view, this book particularly it's like a massive change in a lot of character story arcs, and different, you know, people that we know in different locations. Brienne, Sam, and Arya being the 3 main ones. So there is a chapter, we'll get to it later on in Feast, but it's to me like a real iconic chapter, and it's the one where Arya runs into Sam in Braavos, in Braavos, and he gets pushed into the river. We'll get to it, but I've done a discussion on this chapter before where it was referred to as it's almost like the kind of the sort of twilight chapter in the whole series, where certain things are coming to an end and then things flick over and change again, and a lot of that seems to be sort of centered around Braavos.
I think the description of Braavos, the detail we get of it is important. We get a description of Braavos as being quite like impenetrable, but they have this aqueduct that they get fresh water through, and that's kind of, I remember reading somewhere that was like that's probably their biggest weakness, the ability to cut off water supply to Braavos. That might come into play. I don't know if it would, though. I don't know if we're going to see much action in Braavos after this series, but maybe later stories.
I think once Arya's left, we're not going to see that much. No.
I mean, it has been confirmed, in case you didn't hear it during the week, definitely no wins in 2019.
Oh my God! Right, really? So how long have we waited? So I don't even know when.
2011. Dance came out.
Dance came out in 2011. Shit! So that's going to be more than 10 years. Wait for the next book.
Apparently. So don't expect it until 2020.
That's crazy. Wow.
So yeah, and I think they're going to say, I think they've been saying for the show it'll be mid to late 2019.
I'm beginning to wonder whether he's actually
spring or the summer
going to do this.
I still think he's waiting for the show to finish, and then he wants a bit of time, or he's just overwhelmed. Maybe he's just overwhelmed. There's a lot of
Oh well, that's pretty much it for me.
With
that's Arya as well. Arrival in Braavos. Obviously, things get a bit livelier later on in the book, but that was a great arrival to a new location, new destination.
Absolutely. So then we have mental health Cersei. She is mad. Cersei too. She's proper mad. I should say hello to Barbara and Red in the chat as well. So I actually, Jen, I'm going to make you a moderator so that you can add your link there, although I'd say everybody knows you at this stage. But so we're on to Cersei 2. There's just a couple of things that I think I want to touch on here. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about smelly old Tywin, stinky old Tywin, poisoning in general, of the emotional and psychological kind, and of the poisoning kind, the physical kind. So so I guess the big thing here is we actually, there's a little bit of an overlap here as well, between Cersei and Jaime, tiny bit. between
Well, there's a few
chapters.
chapters. There's a few chapters that centre
Yeah.
around Tywin's death,
Yeah.
the vigil, his funeral. There's at least a couple of Jaime chapters, a Cersei chapter. You know, it spans quite a few, and there's a bit of crossover here as well. But I want to start this discussion on this chapter by asking you, do you think Cersei loved her father?
It's funny you should say that, because there is a line here. She tells Tommen, "You are a king, not a squalling child. Your lords are watching you, and I don't be crying." And she thinks very shortly after that, her father's eyes had always been unsettling, pale green, almost luminous, flecked with gold. His eyes could see inside you, could see how weak and worthless and ugly you were deep down. When he looked at you, you knew. Like,
yeah.
Okay, that's why Cersei's crazy. I mean,
but you know what? That's not actually. Maybe it is, but in my experience, like I've got, like we call it the mum look. Like my mum has this. When we were growing up and we were kids, she didn't even have to say anything. You'd just get the look, and it'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble." So I don't know whether this is just completely, when Cersei's describing her father and how she feels about her father, whether or not this is just all about her insecurities and projecting. Yes. Because you really get a sense, I get a sense in this chapter that Kevin is actually a pretty decent guy.
So, oh, totally. So what I mean by that is that's not, I don't put that on Tywin. I'm not putting her crazy on Tywin. I'm putting
Kevin is making me feel more and more that actually Tywin, whatever his methods and blah 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 and what have you, I think there are worse men than Tywin in this book series. Hoster and
Tarly,
potentially Doran and Tarly being
Craster.
Being a few of them. And I don't, you know, when as grubbing and as horrendous as Pycelle is, when he says that, I think it's in Jaime's chapter, when he says that, you know, Tywin was the greatest man ever, blah blah blah. Not that I'm going to be waving the flag for Tywin anytime soon, but I think a lot of I think there's a lot of projection. I think she's scared of her father, and she seems to twist reverence towards her father into love. Well, so she seems to feel as though she's scared of him, therefore she feels that everybody needs to be scared of her.
So it's the words that she uses, that he looks inside you and sees how worthless and ugly you are. And for me, that seems as if Cersei doesn't know how to express, nobody ever showed her how to express love in a non-sexual way. So when Jaime and her were fooling around, Joanna separated them. It doesn't sound as if she showed much affection towards Cersei. So, and maybe Cersei was a difficult child to love, but it seems as if, you know, the person she loved the most, Jaime, she could express that love sexually, and she couldn't do that with Tywin, or Tywin didn't seem to show any interest in doing that with her. I know that sounds really gross, and it is, but I feel like Cersei doesn't feel as if she's worth it unless men are looking at her, and like we see this in Dance especially, or towards the end of Feast, I should say, when like she's really starting to feel like she's putting on weight, and she's looking less and less attractive, and she's really feeling the threat of not having the male gaze.
I think deep down she has all these insecurities because she's a woman, and she feels as though, you know, she's been denied what Jaime's been freely handed because he's the male. But I think that she does have these deep-rooted insecurities, but she suppresses them so much because of her ego. And I'm not excusing. Cersei is a fascinating character to me, and I'm not excusing her behavior whatsoever. I just think that feeling of, and it begins in this chapter, that mounting paranoia and that it's that house of cards that at any point just could completely collapse around her. She's constantly worried when, not if, but when is Lancel going to spill the beans about all that kind of side of things.
And she is paranoid, but with good reason, I would argue. And I feel
like it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch somebody's descent because of all this, this pressure on them of like you can, and how she reacts to that as well.
It makes me, when I'm reading a Cersei chapter, I kind of clench.
Yes.
It's like, oh, you can really feel the tension. Jen says, I think she admires Tywin and confuses love for admiration. The only card she had to play was the fact that she was one of the most beautiful, eligible, highborn girls in the kingdom. And that was what made her a source of pride and something of value to Tywin. So there's certainly, that's certainly a part of her problem as well. Connie says she lost her mum at 9 at a very tender age for a girl. Tywin's daughter, not good enough for Aerys' son. He projected that anger towards her. It's a funny one. I mean,
you can certainly see where her issues come from, where they're rooted from.
I would put Robert Baratheon into the mix here as well.
Yeah, and we get more of an insight later on in Cersei chapters about what may have been going on actually in that, like really what could have been going on in that relationship.
And even in Jaime's next chapter where he says, "You gave my children to Robert. You made them his children." It's kind of, she's all, as much as she. Well, we only have hindsight, right, to tell us that she hated him and that he made her skin crawl, but there is certainly in, I think, a Game of Thrones, she said to Ned that she actually was quite attracted to Robert initially. There was some sort of, she tried to be his wife initially. I thought there was at some point she kind of admits that she did try at the beginning, but he was so brutal. He called her Lyanna on their first night together. So there is this kind of, there's only so much somebody can take when your whole worth is built
it's like that. All of the ingredients have gone into this recipe to create narcissistic Cersei, because she is, to me, I think probably, certainly unusually from a female character's point of view, supremely narcissistic, because she's starting to, and you get this gets much progressively worse as this book marches forward. She is really beginning to believe her own hype. The lies that she's created for herself, she's beginning to convince herself that actually is true, that is the reality. So when you get, in Cersei's point of view, this feeling as the reader, almost agreeing with Cersei, like, how dare Mace be so presumptuous, presuming that his family can do this and will be awarded, but actually you're almost colluding and co-signing Cersei's narcissism, because how dare she be so presumptuous?
Well,
she's created a situation for so it's, I find it absolutely fascinating.
Well, and I think but for the grace of R'hllor, she had all of this happened to her maybe when she was a bit older, she'd probably be more of an Olenna type character. I mean, how dare Olenna Tyrell be so presumptuous and just downright rude to, like, basically just publicly humiliate the regent, and just start talking about how stinky her dad's body is in the set. I mean, that is pretty bad. And that is the kind of thing Cersei might do if she was an older kind of type of woman.
All of this is interesting. The whole, everything that's happening in King's Landing at the moment, there's a massive power vacuum being taken out with Tywin. So everyone is jostling and prodding and checking where the boundaries might be. So that, again, is another huge reason for Cersei to have this crazy, misguided narcissism about her own importance and her own position, and
And
how far she'll go to protect that. And
she also needs to redefine where her power base is. She's not going to marry again, so she can't use that as a power base. And she thinks she has the wit of her father to make that her new thing. Oh, I'm actually really smart. I'm not just here because I was beautiful and I'm a woman that could be married off. I'm actually really clever, and I know what everybody's doing all the time. I'm watching all of you. And yeah, that's where she believes that kind of hype. But then Jaime kind of pulls the rug out from under her. Kevin pulls the rug out from under her, and Qyburn pulls the rug out from under her in a way. I think it's not just the Tywin power vacuum. There's a Littlefinger and a Varys power vacuum as well, and you can see people stepping in to take that place as well, like everywhere. And even a Tyrion power vacuum for sure. She'll miss Tyrion more than she thinks. I just want to talk about Kevin for a minute, because I think you're absolutely right. Kevin, hey Ion, how are you? A feast for Cersei is indeed what we're on. Kevin is hugely surprising here, and it makes me really sad knowing what we know after Dad's, what happens to Kevin, because he has a chance to get out here and he doesn't really get it. And he is very smart. He isn't as power hungry as the other Lannisters are. He seems to have been Tywin's #1 confidant, which we could never see because we didn't have the benefit of a Tywin POV. And I have to say, though, he is willing to put Tyrell men into key positions on the council. Now, that isn't very good for the Lannisters, but it might be very good for the kingdom. So I guess if he's doing it from the point of view of the kingdom, it's good. But from the point of view of the Lannisters, is he being a little bit naive?
I think I think Tywin shared a lot of his plans with Kevin, and I think he probably is, to an extent, fulfilling what Tywin would have done in that situation, but with a healthy dose of real sad kind of, sibling grief over the death of his very, very important older brother. But I think I've got highlighted in my notes, and it's really annoying because without going back and trying to find it, somebody in this chapter is described as a faithful mastiff, and I think it's either Cersei describing Kevin as Tywin's faithful mastiff.
I was remembering that, I think I really like mastiffs.
Because there's also a bit in this chapter with Qyburn as well, where he's really ingratiating himself with Cersei, where he says your secrets are safe with me, and he's sort of like he's getting her to reveal stuff, and he's kind of currying favor with her, and she sort of weighs it up and thinks, oh well, she just kind of goes with it, and she allows herself to be manipulated quite easily by Qyburn. But again, you know what? Similar to what I said about Arya in Arya's chapter, if you were to do a kind of like psychological risk assessment of Cersei's state of mind right now in this chapter, she's really vulnerable.
Really vulnerable. Really, really vulnerable. Yeah. And I think Kevin really knocks her for 6 with this. I can't find the master thing. I could. Is it definitely this one, or is it definitely Cersei's chapter? Yeah.
Definitely Cersei's chapter, and it's either, because I've got my one of my questions is Kevin working with Marwyn, or I can't remember whether it was Qyburn, and I mean Qyburn would make more sense.
I think Qyburn is definitely working with Marwyn. I also think Qyburn is working with the Martells. Definitely.
Right. Okay. I mean, if it was, I've got a feeling it was Qyburn who said, Your Grace may trust in my discretion. Your secrets are safe with me. I am your faithful mastiff. If that is the case, that's a massive, massive link back to Marwyn, because he's described as Marwyn the Mastiff. So that could be a huge link of those two working together.
Well,
because he's there for a reason. He's really, I mean, there's obvious things going on around. You're almost, as a reader, want to scream, Cersei, wake up, see what's happening around you here. Just, you know, who are these people that are giving you all this advice that are suddenly, you know, in your favor? And Qyburn, he's there for a reason.
No, I mean, and whatever he's doing to the mountain, it's clear he's doing some dreadful things to the mountain, who is screaming in agony. Rather than putting him to sleep, he's allowing him to scream in agony. And he says that's because he's built up a tolerance for the milk of the poppy. But I don't know, I feel like he's doing that on purpose so that he will be moved to the dungeons and can do whatever he wants. Connie makes a good point about Cersei as well, that when Tywin you know, offered her to Robert, he said, here's my daughter Cersei. We sacked King's Landing for you, so take my daughter. Who else are you going to marry? I've got gold galore, and here's some dead Targaryen kids. Oh yeah, and she's pretty too. So yeah, that's not going to do much for your sense of self, for sure. Just with Qyburn as well, the idea that he knows exactly how Oberyn's poison is working, that it's some sort of enchanted poison. I'm not really sure how many times he would have encountered such a poison, and how he would know how you would have such insight into it without actually knowing how it was manipulated. Because even Cersei tries to probe it, and because she's Cersei, she doesn't really push him on it. He says, oh, you know, some sort of magical thing.
Like a thickening, it's been thickened somehow.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that seems to be very...
Again, it almost seems as though all of that was planned, as if Oberyn would know that Qyburn was going to be working on the mountain, and that was going to be the state of play after he died, and that you know, he was always going into it knowing that was going to happen. It was like a suicide mission, which almost paid off. You know, he almost made it. He almost made it through if it hadn't been for his like showboating at the end of it. But I think I think Oberyn, you know, 99.9% didn't think he was going to survive that anyway. Yeah. And yeah, this could have been planned with Qyburn. Just, you know, a lot of it could be a real obvious plan.
That a really creepy line where he says he was opening the bodies of the living to study the dead.
Yeah.
What are you up to? The other thing I just wanted to talk about in general was just bad parents. And we obviously have the Cersei and Tommen thing, which will come up again in Jaime's chapter. And also bad children, with Cersei complaining at the beginning of this that she'd have to wear black again. You know, oh, sorry, Cersei, to mourn your dead family members. Poor you.
Yeah, grieving is very much a bother to Cersei. That's how it just feels like something that's like, oh, really? Do I have to do this? Yeah.
It's like she's going to Christmas dinner or something. Like, I mean, you know, it's a bit more than that, Cersei. The other thing I wanted to ask you, is there any significance in all these babies that are going to be called Tywin?
I'm not sure about I'm not sure about that. Possibly, yeah. Because I mean, the funny thing is that that particular baby, the first one, what she called Lollis's mother. Do we have your pardon to name Lollis's bastard unborn child Tywin? And Cersei was like, how very dare you?
Yeah.
And then she ends up being called Tyrion. Oh, he ends up being called Tyrion, should I say.
So Connie suggests that it's actually Qyburn's spells that are prologuing the Mountain's life, not Oberyn's spell.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I think I said
like
this
necromancy.
Before. Yeah. Preston Jacobs has a great video on the connection. I believe it's Preston Jacobs on the connection between Qyburn, Oberyn, and Marwyn.
Right.
So they're all kind of outsiders to do with the Citadel. So.
They are actually, you could see them being in a kind of like trio almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all well traveled, and they all come up at random points in the story, referenced by random characters. So, yeah, there are connections there, I think. Was there anything else then with Mad Owl Cersei?
Just that with Kevin again. I know we've kind of covered Kevin, but three things that he says to completely like disable and dismantle Cersei's psyche at the time, and this is where she becomes her most vulnerable. So he tells her, "You are not your father." And this is all the things that she's telling herself to build herself up to be this, like, what she thinks is this amazing regent. Mm-hmm. You are not your father. He tells her outright to her face that she's an unfit mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's well, if you rule the kingdom the way you raised Joffrey, we're all fecked, basically.
And the third and most crucial is he drops the massive incest confirmed bomb. That's which right. Is, you know, Tommen's got nothing to worry about. He's got his mother and his father, wink, wink, you know, but it's this. So if Kevin knew, Tywin did know, I thought that was very interesting, that little bit with Kevin at the end.
Yeah, no, I think Tywin knew. Mm. I mean, in the show, she tells him, and yes. I wonder, is it because it's significant that Tywin knows? Is there some significance to Tywin knowing at the end of this? Mm. I mean, is this one of the motivating factors for Tywin working so hard to put them there?
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the Lannisters are the Targaryens now.
Yeah, yeah.
All this inbreeding, but who knows?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, you get the feeling that Kevin just doesn't give a shit anymore about the realm. So, you know, and he's just deeply in grief for his brother.
You also get the impression he doesn't give a shit about the Lannisters either, though. I mean, he says, "Make me Castellan," but it's not like it's not a power hungry thing.
And he's also, I mean, I don't know if this is just the way Cersei's describing this, but he's got to be looking at his son as well and thinking, oh my God, you know, he's apparently, he looks about 70 now, Lancel. Yeah. And he's on the verge of like becoming like really pious and weird. And, you know, Kevin's got enough on his plate without being Cersei's hand or, you know, lapdog or whatever. It's just.
And he would have known, like, okay, if your own dad knows that you're mad.
Yeah.
And he's probably, with the exception of Jaime, the only person in the world that will tolerate you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to, So speaking of one person who doesn't give a shit about the Lannisters to another, Jaime Lannister.
Yeah.
So Jaime won. Very excited to be back into Jaime chapters. I really enjoy Jaime chapters from Storm. I forgot how much I enjoyed them. And there's a couple of things in this chapter. I mean, the big thing is just the Jaime Varys kind of interaction, in how we kind of get Jaime's thought process of how it came about that he helped free Tyrion. Actually, before I do that, I just want to say Connie says, oh yeah, Uncle Kevin to the non-rescue.
Yeah.
And Connie says, no actual Baratheons on the throne due to Cersei. 2 battles for the Lannisters to get so near to the throne, and Cersei has to screw that up.
Yeah,
no actual Baratheons, but there might be an actual Baratheon out there, which may be referenced in this chapter as well. So
Jaime does vow in this chapter to kill Varys, though. Like, you know, if he ever sees him again, blah blah blah. But not Tyrion. He doesn't outright. And I mean, he sort of toys with the idea and just that. But I mean, basically, he blames himself for his father's death because he let his brother go. So this is his anguish as he's doing this vigil, this 7 night vigil. And he's been there for a few nights now, I think. So he's starting to get a little bit woozy and a bit kind of, you know, he's he's starting to have these strange waking dreams and stuff about Rhaegar. But he vows to kill Varys quite clearly. He wants to pin his blame on someone, and he's really pissed off with Varys. So do you think Jaime will ultimately end up killing Varys?
Yeah, I mean, he does put his knife to his neck and draws blood, and comment, and Varys he's really freaked out by the sight of his own blood. So if he does kill him, it'll be very bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. How much of this do you think was, how much of it, I don't think Varys needed Jaime to fulfill this plan, to have Tyrion escape, but then
no, but Jaime needed Varys.
Varys needed Varys, but it's funny because Jaime doesn't probably realize, the reader can kind of assume that this would have happened anyway without Jaime's help.
Yeah.
Because Jaime confirms that Varys is Rugen, the Black Cells jailer, and that he has been this character for years, or has assumed the identity for this character, and has framed the Tyrells now with the Gardner coins and all that kind of thing. And even like the jailer here, oh, he was never doing his job, he was never here, he didn't show up, and then there's a kind of a throwaway line here about the jailer, or the fact that they have 20 people manning the jails, but 6 prisoners over the last whatever. And it's like, this doesn't seem to make sense. Why do we have so many staff here when we're not? It's King's Landing. Why do they have so few? Like, Stannis has more in his cells nearly than Cersei has in her cells, or Tywin has in. Like, was there no one speaking out against Joffrey? I mean, is apathy that like low or that high in King's Landing? It's
strange, isn't it? And also that's probably, one of the reasons why they didn't have people to send to the wall.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know it's been recently emptied to send people to the wall, and I know Ned emptied the cells, but according to this jailer, that was the cell. That wasn't the cells that keep them. That was the cells of wherever the city guard keep their jails. That wasn't the jails of the castle.
You'd think there'd be a lot of like crime going on in a city like King's Landing for them to be full, for them to be completely full all the time.
The black dungeons, or the black cells, they only, in the last however many years, they've had 6 prisoners, right? They had the 3 guys who, Jaqen, Rourke, and Brighter, who the jailer says he pleaded with Ned not to send them to the wall, that they were like a special type of bad, which is kind of interesting. Ned, Pycelle, and Tyrion. It feels like, well, maybe Robert, but it feels like if Joffrey had known about these cells, he would have had them full just for his own sick, twisted imagination.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a strange one. I can't quite. Like, I don't know. It also seems a bit of an overkill to keep somebody like Ned and Pycelle there. Yeah.
There's something not right going on with the numbers.
And even Jaime, the way Jaime processes it, he's like, this
doesn't work out. Why we're paying for so many people and so few prisoners?
Well, for me, it only leads back to Varys. This is all to do with Varys.
Like he's running some sort of secret operation there or something.
I think you could connect all those 6 people to Varys wanting them there at a particular time.
Yeah.
It might also connect Varys to Jaqen and these potential faceless men.
So maybe Sonny Frank is asking, and it's kind of links to what I was going to ask. One of my questions is about Jaime's relationship with Rhaegar. Would he have backed him, or would he have backed? Basically, what would have changed? Because Rhaegar in this chapter was saying, kind of like, we'll sort things out once this battle and everything is ended. And I just think, would he at some point have backed Rhaegar over Robert? And Sonny Frank said, about halfway through the chapter, Jaime thinks to himself that the crows feasted on Rhaegar at the Trident, and that shouldn't happen to kings. Any thoughts?
That's actually a reference to Hamlet.
Right.
In Hamlet, he says it to Claudius that the same worms that feast on kings, or the same worms that feast on the poor feast on kings. We're all the same when we go to the ground. So for me, it's something to do with. For me, that's when Rhaegar. It's something to do with Rhaegar not having an inflated sense of kingship, the way that Ares did, the way that Cersei does.
Yes.
And that to me suggests that Jaime would have gone with Rhaegar, that he is, like, he even thinks about the white book, that he's not going to fill it with lies. He'd sooner tear the whole thing to pieces than fill it with lines. Like, Jaime is very progressive, I think, in the way he views rule and power.
Well, the name of this book, the title of the book, A Feast for Crows, and the fact that in the very next chapter in Brienne's, in the last chapter for this week, but in Brienne's chapter, there's a reference to the crows, friend or foe, the crows care not, which means that the crows are the great equalizers in this story. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a king. It doesn't matter if you're, a hedge knight. It doesn't matter if you're just a commoner. It doesn't matter to the crows. They'll eat you anyway.
Well, and the crow it's a metaphor for death. So death is the great equalizer, which is the battle to come. So it's the same theme in Hamlet. It doesn't matter who you are, everybody's going to die. You don't get any special ways out unless you're Qyburn and the mountain. But no, I think this is all leading up, and we've seen that in the show as well. This is all leading up to Jaime becoming a key player in helping to defeat the others. And the crows, maybe there's something about, maybe that's about the Night's Watch, that whoever is at the wall when the others come through, they're gonna white all of those crows and bring them with them, and they could be at the front line of ironically, that would be really amazingly kind of literary to have these crows that were guarding the realm suddenly turn against the realm and be the first line of attack against the realm. That would pretty much see through it, and that could even just be the wall collapsing in and of itself. The wall collapsing, maybe just the turning of the Night's Watch.
There's a couple of things that I want to bring up about this chapter that sort of link to the crows in a way, and what we've been saying so far about the crows being equalizers and things. And I think, again, this reference to religion and the old gods and the new gods, and I think there's almost like a mini battle going on backwards and forwards. So there's a scene where Cersei is just about to visit when he's on his vigil, and he notices that the rainbows just like completely flood into the room that he's in, which and to me, rainbows flooding and refracting and what have you is just like the several descriptions we've had of the light that bounces off the wall. So to me, rainbows equate to, and rainbow light equates to the wall, therefore equates to the old gods. So whenever I see rainbows, I always think of the old gods. And then almost immediately after,
think of this.
Yeah, holographic. But then immediately after seeing the rainbows flooding, the light flooding through the room, the Septons walk past, swinging the thick, heavy incense that just eliminates the light from the rainbows. So to me, that was like that. In terms of battle, that's the new gods fighting back the old gods. But then later on, when when Jaime's talking to Tommen outside and talking about going away inside, which is freaky. He notices that again, the crow, the equalizer, but to me, the crow relates to the old gods, shits on Baelor. So the crow comes along, takes a shit on the statue of Baelor, which to me means the old gods have beaten the new gods. So there's this mini battle going on between the old gods and the new gods because of the, the iconography that we see through the crow, the rainbows, the I know, but to me they're not. The rainbow isn't 7. It relates to the wall and the light that bounces off the wall.
So I had a different reading of that, and I thought you were going to go in a different direction. I thought that him getting weary at that point, the septas, the rainbows, the light, kind of the fractals of light, if you like. I thought that was him. I thought that was Joanna coming in a vision. I thought that was him on the cusp of a vision at that point, or a visitation, if you like, until Cersei showed up and ruined it. Because originally...
I thought that was going to happen in this chapter. I thought, oh, well, it's finished.
I was like, oh, this is Joanna. Oh, I thought it was a bit different. And she's wet, which Cersei isn't wet when he's talking to her. But the woman that he sees initially, he thinks, oh, it must be raining outside. But it's actually Cersei. And then he starts thinking, oh, it's the way Cersei used to visit me. It's like the night she came to me. And we have this kind of flashbacks almost to the Gendry kind of idea that perhaps this is the woman that was visiting Gendry as well. But that's what I thought. I thought it was him on the cusp of having a vision until Cersei interrupted.
Possibly, and also just before Cersei arrives, he sees the Silent Sisters that come flooding out of the again where the stranger is, the statue of the stranger. So the Death's handmaidens that he refers to them as the Silent Sisters, linked very heavily to the stranger, which kind of links back to the conversation we were having last week about the Silent Sisters. So I felt as though, okay, this is where we're going to see Joanna. Oh no, the chapter's ended. That's it. He just gives us some advice about sending Mace Tyrell to go and win Storm's End, and
she's very clever.
Yeah, and
that's better than Kevin's idea. I have to say as well, you mentioned it there. Oh, actually, sorry, just before you move on about the Silent Sisters, the septas, there were 77 septas at Tywin's wake, or vigil, whatever they call it. I think they said wake, actually. So there's 11, did I do my math right? 11 septas per god.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a Spinal Tap thing. He's turning it up to 11. If it's a Catholic thing. It sounded a little bit like the Decades of the Rosary almost, but add one for extra luck. Like that you have all these septas. Like it must be a sight. These septas praying, and I mean that's terrifying for a child of Catholic Ireland to think of that many septas in one place. I
wonder if any of the septas are related to the stranger, though, because the stranger seems to already have the Silent Sisters.
Yeah, I don't know what that, because they say that there's septas to represent every god, but are the Silent Sisters septas too, or are they separate?
I think they're completely separate.
So it's like different kind of orders.
Yeah.
When you've nuns, like you've got your.
But they are linked to the new gods, definitely. Yeah.
It's very. I need to learn more about the religion. Anyway, you mentioned very briefly Jaime's dad moment with Tommen. Poor old Tommen. Cersei's been awful to him. There's a really creepy moment.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
What was Joffrey doing to Tommen?
Yeah.
This sounded more than just Joffrey tormenting a few cats. This is something else. Was there some Aeron action going on with Joffrey here?
Well, it just sounds horrible. It could be when Joffrey used to pull me hair, or when Joffrey used to whatever, but because it's quite a bold thing for even somebody like Tommen to come out with.
But we've only heard this idea of going within yourself once before, and that's when Jaime was talking to Brienne about being raped.
Yeah.
It's very disturbing.
Yeah, just switch your brain off and go somewhere else.
Whatever Joffrey was doing to poor Tommen, this is, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
We used to have, I mean, there's that old phrase, isn't there, that's not nowhere near as sinister, but still quite sinister, the lie back and think of England. But yeah, that go away inside, it's creepy. But yeah.
Connie says that Rorgan may have been in the Black Cells because before the hands tourney, a woman's head was found floating in a septic pool. And at the time, no one knew how it got there. No one. Just read that. Interesting. Jen says she is a Catholic and she thinks that maybe it is different orders. Like you have the Carmelites and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the creepiest thing, though, poor old Tommen.
Yeah.
Things are not going to work out well for him. Also, just the idea that Cersei is like, we have to look after Tommen because Marcella's in Dorne, and it's really just a practical thing to look after Tommen at this stage. It's not. It doesn't seem to be a very affectionate thing. No. Is there anything else on Jaime?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking there what you were saying about Cersei. She even kind of wishes that Tommen was a bit more like Joffrey, and it's like, God, the things must be. Yeah, I mean that is a messed up mother-son relationship. If you're wishing that your sweet innocent son was a bit more like your psychopathic, oldest son. But it just, I mean, yeah, he needs to toughen up a bit if he's going to be king, but she doesn't. She's just horrible with him. She's horrible.
He's 8.
Poor little thing.
Poor thing. All right. So, Brienne 2, our last chapter tonight. So we have a very kind of. I want to ask you about the point of this description, this history of Duskendale we get. We have a lot about well, first of all, the thing that stood out to me is the lax security on the way in. It's like, oh, you have some business that you need doing and my sister can do it. Yeah, you can come in. And then the other thing is that we get this kind of a brief history of the defiance of Duskendale, which is where this is kind of credited as sending Aerys over the edge because he ended up being a hostage here. And it initially started with the people rising up in Duskendale against the high taxes that they had to pay to Aerys.
Yeah.
And this is the point that this is the kind of the rebellion that drives a wedge between Tywin and Aerys. So we kind of get that bit of history. But is there anything else that you caught with this?
Well, just the interesting history that you get again about the smaller houses, the lesser houses. So we get that link back to Dantas.
Yes.
She's, and it's true, really. I mean, if everybody knows that Dantas is the last remaining survivor of his house, he's a bit of a loser, and if he really has stolen Sansa Stark, the last and most obvious place he would hightail it to would be Duskendale. And there is that kind of like dull moment from Brienne when she realizes that, but nonetheless it does give us an interesting insight into some of the smaller houses and how some of them are really hanging on by a thread and could just be wiped out completely. These lands and these this castle no longer belongs to you. So you can never really sort of have this peaceful and enjoyable life when you're at the whim of
it's interesting.
Whoever, yeah.
It's interesting for Brienne to be hearing about this. I mean, she obviously knew already. I guess the reader through Brienne hearing about this off the back of Jaime dropping this bombshell that Rhaegar potentially was going to reinvent this system or take over and make big political change in Westeros, or at least change in the type of rule that was in Westeros. So it does kind of throw into kind of sharp focus the need for a change that they didn't get with Robert, for sure. I mean, he just plunged the country into more debt, and actually Connie made some really good points there about Littlefinger taking bribes through the city watch, so that could have been why the cells were so empty. It could be a combination of Littlefinger and Varys. But yeah, I mean,
I just have to say that I find it hilarious that we're on a Brienne chapter and Brienne the cat is meow 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 in the background. That's what you can hear. If you can hear a cat in the background, it's Brienne.
She's asking,
Brienne of whiskers.
Have you seen my sister? Auburn hair.
She's a maid of 3 and 10. No, I haven't seen your sister.
She's probably traveling with a fool.
Yeah.
God, you're the fool.
She's looking for Sansa. She could be. Yeah. Although she actually fights really badly with her sister. Her sister is Asha, the Kraken's daughter, and they hate each other. They can't even be in the same room as each other. Brienne and Asha. No. Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
They call it, I don't know, litter envy or litter something.
Are they from the same?
Yeah, you should never get, especially with dogs, you should never get like siblings from the same litter because they're just constantly fighting for like the upper hand. So Brienne's a bit bigger than Asha, so she usually ends up winning. But yeah, anyway, complete diversion on Brienne the cat.
Tell the chat that these are probably the last cats you'll ever own.
Probably, yeah.
You said that a few times.
Oh, they're a nightmare.
They're very fussy with their food as well.
Yeah,
like Brienne. Brienne isn't eaten enough in this chapter, according to the little person that she meets.
At one point, no, she doesn't. At one point in history, there were 7 sons of Darkling that were all in the King's Guard. That's quite interesting. And if it was in the reign of Ares at some point in that history, then you can imagine him feeling a little bit like Cersei did in her chapter of like, oh, it's all, I'm losing control.
Yeah.
I've got like 2. I mean, why would you have 7 sons of one house all in the King's Guard at the same time? That's completely tipping the balance of power.
How did that even happen?
Yeah. Just, I love the insight in Brienne's chapters into what's going on with the small folk and individual characters. Though, like that's just a really, and it's I don't know, it's just the description of the painting and how she's so desperate to get the is it Lothston sigil off her shield, but the description of the painting and the girl that was doing the painting and
it's it's a bit like Dunk's. That's the shield, isn't it? That she's seen in her father's.
Yes, yeah.
Dunk's shield that she gets painted.
But it's
not your typical sigil. It looks it's prettier than that.
Yeah. There's a link there, and I think George R.R. Martin has pretty much near as damn it confirmed that. What did he say? There are current descendants of.
I think so. Yeah.
Dunk. In the current story, so it's got to be.
I have to admit this chapter is kind of frustrating because I feel like a lot of this chapter could be pared down and put in the previous chapter or in the next chapter. It feels a little fillerish, a little bit. I mean, we do have the main thing of her meeting Podrick and things like that, but it feels a little bit more like a Game of Thrones type chapter than a chapter we should be getting in Feast. But maybe it was also nice to have the break of not having to do like all the different connections of political intrigue. But it does feel like we're watching her on her wild goose chase. And
that's really interesting that you say that, because I mean I love Brienne chapters anyway, but to me
I love her as a POV for sure. Yeah,
there's a couple of crucial things that come out for me in this chapter, which are you get a spotlight on who is Brienne of Tarth, away from Jaime and away from, because there's a couple of, in Jaime's chapter, he starts thinking about children and how many children must have been conceived during such and such a time, and then the minute he starts thinking about children being born, he thinks of Brienne, which is odd. And also in Brienne's chapter, when she thinks of Jaime, the description that she has in her head is of him being half a corpse, half a god, which again is a really weird. They've got such a strange relationship. I know, it's weird. But
whatever you're into, Claire, don't judge.
Taking Jaime out of the equation and just looking at Brienne of Tarth as a character, there's two huge things that are underlined for us to be aware of about Brienne, which makes, this is exactly what makes her one of my favourite characters. She's, right, let me preface this by saying, from a kind of feminist perspective and Brienne of Tarth as a character, Brienne, she, the biggest threat to a woman's safety, even now in modern times, is statistically is men. So me personally, being a woman, whenever I see a woman that's a big gal, that especially a bit muscly and who can handle herself, I'm always in awe of those kind of women, you know, those proper like Olympian kind of, she doesn't fall into that statistic of being a woman who would necessarily be, you know, her safety would be in danger from a man because she can handle herself. And I fucking love female characters like that. They're the most empowering to me. So you get underlined with that she's quick. She's quicker than a woman her size should ever even need to be. She's strong, and she knows she's strong. She knows her own strength, and she's got stamina. So all of these like amazing qualities that she's got, but also in equal measure, she's awkward. She's super shy. She describes herself as being stupid, you know, and she's just, for that reason, I just want to wrap her up in it. She's so naive.
I will agree with her on not being the smartest, Claire.
Yeah, you know, she's
a mirror opposite is Sansa, who's got like a third of Brienne's physical strength, but 3 times her intellect for sure.
However, she doesn't, I mean, she does figure things out though, because even though there was that like, oh yeah, of course, what am I doing here actually? He wouldn't have, Dontos Hollard wouldn't have come back to Duskindale. If I'd have thought about that, I could have figured that out. However, very quickly afterwards, she does think to herself, when it comes to Sansa's whereabouts, that blood attracts blood. So she starts, thank you. Can you let her out?
Sit down.
Just let her out. Sounds a merry owl. Thank you. Now she's gone and run away because she's like, I didn't want to go out really. Yeah, she does very quickly figure out that blood attracts blood, and then she starts thinking, okay, so she could have gone to find her uncle. She could have gone up to the wall. Oh God, she could have actually just gone on a ship and be absolutely anywhere. I'm completely out of my depth here. So she does, you know, she's not that stupid. She's not the sharpest tool in the box, definitely.
Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily a deficit for her, because she doesn't use it as a crutch, and she doesn't use it like some characters would go, oh, I'm too stupid, so, and gives up. Like, she'll never do that. She'll always keep going, regardless of that as being, she knows where her weakness is.
Yeah.
She also knows where her strength is. So she'll know that, okay, well, I am really strong and tall, so this does keep me protected. So I am going to put my helm down so they won't have any inkling of who I am when I'm here and in a dangerous place. But yeah, I think George does a good job, especially with the female characters, of playing to their different strengths, depending on what that is, and showing how women, especially in this time where it is extremely patriarchal, playing to the strengths that they have in order to survive in this world. Whereas somebody like Jaime is completely adrift now. He doesn't know. Like, there's a line in Jaime's chapter where he says that he feels more in the arm that he's, or in the hand that he's missing, than he does in his whole body right now. Whereas he can, because his whole identity was wrapped up in one thing, whereas a woman has to think of all different facets of her identity, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. So yeah, no, you're totally right. And she's a fascinating character. My only problem with this chapter is it is a little bit, I feel like some of it is just her repeating over and over again the Sansa stuff. I found a little bit, come on. It's just, I want to speed it up.
She does. And there's an awkwardness about her asking people. And it is, as we discussed last week, it's a really stupid question when you think about it. And it's obvious. Highborn lady, you know, I mean, yeah, maybe most of the small folk wouldn't quite know who you're talking about, but even when somebody says, and what was her name, and she just thinks, oh shit, I didn't even think about thinking up a name.
Yeah.
And on the spot she can't think of one at all. She just,
how stupid are the small folk that's the first time she's been asked that question. Like nobody has thought to ask her what the name is yet.
The other thing I found that was quite important in this chapter, I think, for shaping Brienne's story arc and her destiny, is again this concept of Brienne being quite closely aligned to the crone. So remember in one of her previous chapters not so long ago where she was talking about a vow to the dead made to the dead is like the strongest vow you can, that's like the unbreakable vow that you can't, and she was thinking then about Catelyn. And obviously we know that Catelyn becomes Lady Stoneheart and there's associations there with the crone. But in this chapter, the brother dwarf that she meets, the little dwarf sparrow, who's really friendly, especially the way that Roy Treese reads it anyway, he seems really friendly. I think, sadly, he's somebody who dies later on in King's Landing.
He's going to the wrong place to survive.
Yeah, he is. But he tells her that in her journey, the crone will light her way. And then later on, Brienne... basically, my question is, there seems to be a very strong connection between the crone with Brienne as there is with Arya and the stranger.
Yeah.
But going back to Brienne and the crone, again, she vows... it's this vow to Lady Cat when she says, I will find her. I'm determined, I will find Sansa Stark. And she's repeating this vow constantly to the dead, who is, to me, the resurrection of Catelyn is an embodiment of the crone, or you could certainly look at it that way. To me, I think that Brienne will ultimately let Jaime down on behalf of the crone,
who so. Yeah.
In the story we know is Lady Stoneheart. And I think this is the beginning of that.
Connie wants to know, will she be a silent sister?
Yeah, maybe she could be. I mean, the silent sisters seem to be more associated with the stranger, do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're linked to more to the stranger.
I think George, the one thing we haven't seen from the point of view of a woman is a woman losing her virginity in a consenting, beautiful kind of way. And it's something that comes up with Brienne a lot, the idea of her maidenhood, and with Sansa a lot. So I think we'll see it with one of those two, because we've seen it with Mercy and Dany, and it's horrific. So I wonder, will we get this kind of a beautiful moment for one of them? And I wonder, will it be Brienne, where she'll finally find somebody that she wants to have this kind of loving, intimate moment with, where she gets to be this beautiful woman that she has refused to allow herself to be.
But she's got this vow.
Yeah.
But she's got this vow. I think there'll be something, sadly, although she's one of my favourite characters, something quite bittersweet with something, with Brienne. But just thinking about the Silent Sisters and how they're closely aligned to the stranger, and they were pouring out of the steps by like down the steps where the stranger was in Jaime's chapter in his vigil. If you were going to hide anywhere or just vanish or slowly kind of disappear somewhere, it would be a good place for somebody to hide. And the stranger is always seen, I suppose, as one of the gods who is no one ever really speaks of the stranger because no one can get a grasp on who it is, almost like a faceless man. I'm just wondering, with Arya seeming to be associated with the stranger, if at some point she will, she'll take the face of a silent sister and go on a bit of a rampage when she gets to Westeros. Just because of that connection there with the stranger. But I don't know. But certainly, to me, it seems like we've got more of a definition of who Brienne is deep down, and just some of the sad things that she's had to deal with in her past, like, suitors that are like old men, or ambitious teens that just don't, that she's just been awkward and shy, and just this backstory that she's got that makes you really feel for her. But I think this is all about us getting familiar with Brienne being aligned to the crone.
Will we ever see will we ever see Tarth? Do you think we'll meet her dad at some stage?
I don't think we ever will. I think it'd be nice if we did, but I don't.
He sounds fascinating. He's like, he doesn't force her to do it. He doesn't force her to get married.
No, I mean, he tries when she's younger, but then I think he just gives up after a while, doesn't he? This just isn't working. Total
opposite. Like, she's the son her dad probably would have wanted, or at least the daughter he's accepted, unlike Cersei Tywin dynamic that we've seen. It feels more like the Ned Arya thing that we saw. But so I mean, this chapter obviously is very significant for Wheel Podrick.
Yes.
Coming into the story again. And
so what is Pod's motivation here then? So is it loyalty. Just loyalty? Is he,
I mean,
is he doing this on his own by his own volition?
Think of the chances of getting somebody. You get to be a squire for somebody that doesn't treat you like shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very, very unlikely at this point that that's going to happen. I mean, there are no Arthur Danes around. There are no Rhaegar Targaryens. No. There's no one like Jaime Lannister was the hero, and he's not going to treat a squire well. Barristan Selmy is gone. So, the chances of getting a decent guy like Tyrion, who actually wants you to sit down and have a laugh with him. Like, I mean, I'm sure Pod knew he was blessed and didn't know what to do. And he seems genuinely hurt at the thoughts that Tyrion has run away without him.
So when you say loyalty, we're saying that Pod's taken it upon himself to find his lord's wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Rather than he's been sent there by Jaime to keep an eye on Brienne or anything, yeah.
No, I think this is all off his own back, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't have anything else for this chapter, to be honest. There's nothing else.
No, I mean, it is quite short and sweet. Again, that it's interesting to get that history about the defiance of Duskendale.
Yes.
Yeah. There's just little clues here, there, and everywhere. These brothers, these sparrows that seem to be cropping up everywhere.
Yeah, the sparrows seem to be cropping up. I wonder though, with the seven brothers, the Kingsguard, will that be the kind of thing that we'll come across in Fire and Blood?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The second part, probably.
I
think there's 2 parts to it, so I don't know how far he's going with the history of the Targaryens, but Connie says, face is hidden like in a traveler's coat. Lady Wolverton then says, I think we will because of Orain Waters or the Ironborn. Going to Tarth, you mean? Yeah. Tobago Moss? No, that's wrong. Anyway, that's autocorrect, I presume. Got something wrong.
Heavy silver chain like Benjamin's at Robinson. Oh, Tobo Mott, not Tobago. Yeah.
Autocorrect, Connie. It happens to me all the time. Wore a heavy silver chain like Benjamin at Robert's feast. Only Tobo had a sapphire on his as big as a goose egg.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, maybe. Interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, Brienne is kind of doing, you know, her adventure around Westeros a bit like Dunk as well. That's true. So yeah, next week we are ending with another Brienne chapter. We're going from Sansa 1 to Brienne 2. And this is like the beginning of Sansa Elaine. Like we will have, I think we get an Elaine chapter in Feast, right? I think we have an Elaine chapter at some stage. But
we do, and we also get another spotlight again on the 2 new locations that we've got in Feast with Asha. So we get the Ironborn through the eyes of Asha, and also we get another insight into what's going on in Dawn with Eris Oakheart.
Hold the phone. Is it already Kingsmoot?
We're coming up to Kingsmoot. Not this week.
Okay, that's good.
But soon.
Oh my God. I can't wait. Okay.
It's actually
is in my top 10 chapters. Probably my top 5.
It's not next week, it's the week after we get the Iron. It's the Iron Captain and the Drowned Man, which I'm guessing is the Kingsmoot 2 together. Yeah.
Excellent. I can't wait. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us in the chat. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
We will see you next week. Same bat channel, same bat time, all that kind of thing. By the way, if you haven't, go see the new Sicario. Amazing. So good. All right. Talk to you next week, folks. Bye.
Bye.